Chapter 25, Dark City Rising. There was an unexpected knock at the door as Pandorè finished observing various cells under his microscope. His countenance seemed to be more troubled than usual. However, this changed when he opened the door and saw Joel standing there.
Ah, Joel, so good to see you again.
Hello, Pandorè. Do you have a moment? I was hoping to ask you a few more questions before I go.
Joel fumbled with his camera, and his hands were shaking. He tried his best to hold himself together about confronting his new friend regarding the strange events surrounding PRISM and his family.
Certainly.
He motioned for Joel to sit down. Joel closed the door behind him but continued to stand. He ignored Ben's want of attention, so Ben sheepishly went to lie on the couch where he was before. Joel held up his camera.
You've stated that PRISM is searching for how the universe began and the nature of dark matter.
Yes.
Pandorè was hoping for a less official visit.
Are there perhaps other things with which PRISM is experimenting?
Well, of course, our studies in these things are quite complex.
Pandorè began to grow nervous as well.
The discoveries and data of these particles often branch into other unknowns.
What other unknowns has your research led you to exactly?
Asked Joel. Pandorè glanced at his microscope and Joel noticed.
What are you working on today, for example?
Joel moved toward the microscope and Pandorè followed. He got the distinct feeling that Pandorè did not want him to see what was underneath the lens.
Well, today I am studying the effects of genetics.
He pushed up his glasses quickly.
Genetics?
Asked Joel, looking through the microscope.
What does that have to do with dark matter?
Pandorè began rubbing the scar on his forehead. He did not know if he should answer or trust Joel. Then Joel lowered his camera and spoke in a formidable tone.
Let me level with you, Pandorè. Since our last escapade with you in the tunnel back in France, not only have we discovered that my mother was kidnapped, but Rachel and I have survived some sort of surreal earthquake just outside of these facilities, which appear to be identical to the other place in France, by the way. We battled the man with the twisted face who transformed into the serpent from the tunnels. Our driver was dead, then miraculously alive, and he accused us of stealing the company car. Oh, and we just ran into some sort of mutated creature in the fog right outside.
Joel pounded his fist to get his point across, disturbing some vials.
Things are getting out of control around here, so unless you are ready for more action, I suggest you start talking.
He was in Pandorè's face now, which made them both uneasy. Joel stood his ground. Pandorè himself was visibly shaking by this point. He collapsed on the couch beside Ben and took a deep breath. He looked like a broken man, which made Joel a little sorry that he had pushed him this far. However, he still wanted to know the truth behind their strange encounters, especially if it led him back to his mom. Joel sat across from Pandorè and placed his camera on the table before them. Pandorè pushed away his gray hair, exposing his scar to Joel.
It all started with this. You are right, Joel. Things are out of control around here.
He held his head, gathering himself to tell the truth.
It all happened when we first began working on the particle accelerator. Dr. Crowning, Rachel's parents, and I were quite young back then. I had just lost my wife and daughter, so I threw myself into work. I should have listened to my wife. She was right about this place.
Pandorè looked pained, but took a deep breath and went on.
We had a very primitive particle accelerator that we had developed during our days at the university. We wanted to return to the earliest models and refine the old plans to build something more powerful in our study of particle physics. Our parents and grandparents had worked on the earliest particle accelerators based on the Nikola Tesla coil. It produced lightning or electricity, using simple copper coils, magnets, and a few other basic materials.
I've heard of Tesla,
said Joel, trying to recall bits that he had read and watched on several documentaries.
He wanted to provide free wireless electricity worldwide. Wasn't he also the one that built the death ray around the turn of the 20th century?
Asked Joel.
Yes, well, he did not call it that himself. However, his technology allowed for much valuable scientific research, including our work here. Some say experiments in teleportation, such as the legendary Philadelphia experiment, have inspired our recent developments. Dr. Crowning's relatives supposedly developed that work, but he's never admitted to that. If it was real, he is keeping that knowledge to himself.
Where a U.S. Navy ship supposedly disappeared and teleported?
Asked Joel.
Some men's bodies fused to the ship when it reappeared. That is a curious legend.
Yes, indeed. In our work at PRISM, Dr. Crowning added a new element to Tesla's technology. An onyx stone he acquired here in Israel. Using the onyx stone accelerated the energy and produced ball lightning, which is how I got this scar.
explained Pandorè. His mind flashed back to his past, recalling the ball of light engulfing his body.
It was strange. When the ball lightning struck me, it surrounded me with such a blinding light. All I could do was lie there pinned to the ground and take whatever would come. Then I saw something amazing I had never seen before.
Go on,
said Joel. This detail piqued Joel's interest, especially about the onyx stone. But he did not want to discourage Pandorè from sharing more.
I seemed to be transported somewhere other than here. It was only for a moment, but I saw a city, a dark city rising out of a mountain and hovering in the air. Then its darkness overcame me, and an intense smell of smoke and sulfur surrounded me. I was choked and could not breathe. I had no strength to move. It felt like I was dying. There was no escaping it. My soul was leaving my body. I closed my eyes, waiting. Then, as I opened my eyes one last time, I saw my wife's face, so alive and beautiful. My Annika. A golden, radiant light surrounded her. That is when I lost consciousness. When I awoke, I was lying on the ground where the ball of lightning had struck me.
Joel was stunned, but he felt anything could sound normal at this point.
Did anyone witness this happen to you?
He asked.
Dr. Crowning said that my entire body had convulsed when the lightning struck me. Then I suddenly disappeared for a few seconds. When I reappeared, my head was injured. He took me to the hospital and helped me to recover. However, despite the setback, we made a major discovery that day. That onyx stone was not just any ordinary onyx stone. It had an unnatural luminosity, which allowed us to heighten the energy levels of quarks, the smallest known particles at that time. It alters their natural state, enhancing their energy levels beyond anything ever recorded. Merging the onyx stone with the ball lightning was the only combination that could produce these energy levels. Dr. Crowning and I believed that I had entered another dimension through teleportation. Now, we have discovered the most powerful particle, the luminon. It has promising qualities to make teleportation safer and more easily accomplished.
Pandorè looked away.
I would do anything to go back, to get back to my wife.
Pandorè lifted his head to look at Joel.
I know this must all sound ludicrous to you.
No,
said Joel.
Not after everything we have seen in the past few months. Do you believe that your wife is still alive, Pandorè?
Pandorè looked away.
I used to think so. However, when I remembered how she looked in my vision, she appeared to be even younger than when we first met. I believe that her soul lives on, but not here.
in heaven?
asked Joel.
If you wish to call it that, yes.
Pandorè walked over to his desk and picked up an old picture of his young wife. Joel caught a glimpse of it. A young Pandorè was in the photo, standing beside her, embracing her, happy. Something looked familiar about the two of them together, reminding Joel of himself and Rachel. However, Pandorè soon put the picture away. He went on.
From our discoveries, I believe that I may be able to reach her again. There are other dimensions out there that are accessible. Perhaps heaven is one of them.
Joel could see a well of emptiness in Pandorè's aged eyes. They seemed void of any true hope, filled with the darkness of grief over losing his wife and daughter, the source of his most profound sorrow.
Do you really believe you can get back to her by using this machine you and Dr. Crowning have created?
Pandorè clenched his jaw and got up to go back to his work.
I know what I saw. Yes, this is how I got back to her before. And with improvements to our equipment, I could make a way to stay with her forever.
Pandorè moved away from his table and began to pace. Joel paused. Part of Pandorè reminded him of his dad before he got to know Jesus. Full of bitterness with no true hope. The way things were looking, this world would not last much longer. Then he said,
What if you did die that day? It may have been by God's grace that you could come back so that you could accept him into your life.
He may have been showing you the two different destinations you could go. Heaven or hell.
Pandorè paused while looking through his microscope. Joel could see that the conversation was in danger of being shut down. It may have been enough to get him thinking about it. Joel knew it was no accident that they all ended up together in Israel, the center of God's creation and where salvation began. After a moment, Joel said,
I know how it feels to lose someone you love, but death is not the end. It is simply a transition to the next stage of a new life.
God can help you see her again if you accept him into your life.
You've given me much to think about, Joel. Thank you for your concern, really.
Pandorè looked touched, but something kept him from continuing the conversation. He looked at how aged his hands had grown, wondering.
I must finish my work now, if you'll excuse me.
One more thing, if you don't mind, Pandorè. You said that the onyx stone heightened your experiments. Where did Dr. Crowning acquire that?
Somewhere here in Israel, but it was years ago when we were younger. A Jewish man had returned to Israel and found some rare gemstones underneath his family's ancient property.
Was it this man?
Joel held up a picture on his phone that he had taken of his grandfather. The timeless portrait in the family mansion showed his grandfather holding the sword and shield, encrusted with precious stones. Pandorè looked closely at the man behind the shield. He also saw that the shield enclosed the onyx stone at its center.
Yes, that is the man. I remember the locals being excited about some of his archaeological discoveries there. He used to work with Dr. Crowning when they were young. That onyx stone on his sword was the bigger piece Dr. Crowning needed to heighten the experiments. It has the remaining portion of the ancient Hebrew letters written on it. The man would not part from it. However, after he died, Dr. Crowning somehow obtained it. He has placed both pieces together, which is now tripling our particle accelerator's power.
The man in the portrait is my grandfather,
said Joel. He began to grow uneasy.
So that's why they are so invested in my family. The man with the twisted face and Dr. Crowning.
I had no idea, Joel.
began Pandorè. However, Joel's sapphire stones on his watch began to glow. They both looked at them intently.
Dr. Crowning is still searching for more stones like yours. He has his own agenda. He believes that it will help him to obtain immortality. You have seen his face, I'm sure. How one part is young while the rest has aged.
Joel nodded.
Dr. Crowning's face is the result of someone turning on the collider too soon in our early experiments. The particle beam struck his head, which should have killed him on the spot. However, he miraculously survived. Now we have discovered that the particles in the accelerator are merging with the energy of these stones. The light causes the stone's physical properties to change. When they merge with particles from our accelerator, they create new matter. Some of that matter can have healing effects that even reverse aging. He believes that this is the key to our future, to obtain eternal life. He sees the particle accelerator as the fountain of youth.
Only God can give eternal life,
said Joel.
That's just it. Dr. Crowning believes that he is a god.
Pandorè's eyebrows lowered, revealing his skepticism about Dr. Crowning's state of mind.
I had wanted to obtain youth for myself when I could get back to Annika, but Dr. Crowning has gone too far.
He's out of his mind about himself being a god,
said Joel. The stones on his watch began to glow brighter.
The creature that you saw in the fog, what did it look like?
Asked Pandorè.
We only caught a glimpse of it, but it seemed to be half human. The other half, I cannot describe clearly. It had distorted, jagged features. Its dark skin was like armor with a sheen like metal or glass. I thought maybe it could have been serpent-like, perhaps the same as the one we encountered in the tunnels. It disappeared within a split second.
Accidents like Dr. Crowning's have happened here before. I was not completely honest with you. I'm sorry, Joel. The man with the twisted face used to work with us as one of our top physicists. His name is Dr. Ahaz. He has indeed attacked our co-workers more than once. However, Dr. Crowning has twisted his mind as much as his face. He was the one who turned on the particle accelerator too soon and injured Dr. Crowning. Since then, I believe Dr. Crowning has been using him for his experiments to fulfill his purposes all along. He even has implanted pieces of the gemstones within Dr. Ahaz's head so that he will be able to track down the other stones. From what I've observed, Dr. Ahaz's DNA has been tainted with that of the dark creatures.
The dark creatures?
Asked Joel.
Yes, Dr. Crowning's experiments have unleashed untold horrors, from new viruses to giant hideous beasts. Some have been contained, but others...
Pandorè trailed off, overwhelmed by what he knew he had taken part in awakening. His hands began to quiver.
Please forgive me, Joel. I had no idea where this would all lead. I just wanted to get back to my wife.
He slumped over and began sobbing with his head in his hands. Joel began to feel sorry for Pandorè and knew he needed to shift his anger toward those who deserved it.
I forgive you, Doctor. Those who have abused your discoveries will pay for it in the end. What else could we expect in these last days?
Pandorè looked at him inquisitively.
I knew that man with the twisted face was involved here somehow,
said Joel.
My mom had given me this watch and other jewels the night they took her. Later that night, a major earthquake occurred, and we thought the house had fallen on her.
Yes. That was when we were performing our first major experiments with the second onyx stone. That night, It was the first time that the accelerator had reached the highest levels that enabled these entire facilities to have the same effects I had during my experience. We had just inserted the copper sphere at the center of the PRISM accelerator and activated it. We attached the onyx stones, which intensified the sphere like a high-powered antenna, and as it reached into the clouds, it produced tremendous ball lightning. We had figured out how to insulate ourselves safely to teleport within our entire complex. Suddenly, the lightning transported us into the air. It was my closest accomplishment towards seeing my wife again. However, instead of light, I saw the darkness that enveloped us all.
Pandora's hands began to quiver worse, but he continued.
We lost control of our power levels and began teleporting at blinding speed. The energy levels got so high that a portal began to open. Several dark giant creatures emerged into our facilities. The creatures were reacting violently to the electricity levels produced. At one point, we could slow the energies enough to halt teleportation. We hovered for a moment, and some creatures escaped into our world. Our former colleague, Dr. Ahaz, showed up. I knew then that Dr. Crowning had used him as his guinea pig for this experiment. He can teleport, just like our facilities. He leaped from our building toward the ground, and before we could contain him, someone triggered the right controls to teleport us back to our original location in France. I'm afraid that is when you and your family first encountered him in Indiana. Recently, I have discovered that the creatures have tunneled underground, causing many enormous earthquakes worldwide. Perhaps they were being led by that twisted man, Dr. Ahaz, who took your mother.
Joel sat in shock, taking in everything that Pandora had shared. He could not help but feel they were about to be on the cusp of Armageddon. How could he fight against such dark forces to save his mother? He thought about the floating city he saw before his mother's kidnapping.
These facilities floated into the air? Why didn't you say this before when we showed you our footage? PRISM is the floating city?
Yes, it is. You are sitting in that same city right now.
Joel began to look around himself as if the walls were closing in. Now he realized they were in the floating city, the place that started it all. The same jagged edges were on the walls and the outside buildings located on the surface. The only difference now was that he had a close-up view.
Why didn't I notice this before?
Thought Joel aloud. He stood up for a moment to look around. Pandora's office was exactly the same as it was in France. He and Rachel had no idea what they were getting into. The buildings appeared dark and mythic in the cloudy skies over Indiana. Now, Joel understood that their mirrored reflection and energy transmissions could easily make them visible or invisible to outsiders.
So you are telling me that these PRISM facilities are the same as the floating city back in Indiana and the PRISM facility in France?
And now some sort of mutated creatures are invading our world? How could you allow this to happen?
Joel was stunned, knowing that every conspiracy theory he had heard about the place was likely true.
I am very sorry, Joel. I was afraid of where this was heading.
I had no idea that they had taken your mother. Dr. Crowning and his followers forced me into absolute secrecy about our technology. He threatened my life and my family. Their lies about me have estranged me from any family I once had. Since then, Dr. Crowning's experiments have grown out of control. He has opened a portal to a new dimension, the dimension of darkness and chaos. After my vision, I saw that our facilities were slowly transforming into the dark city I saw in the other dimension. There is no telling how far he will go now that he's made contact. You're in grave danger if you stay here, Joel.
I have to take that chance. I know he has my family wrapped up in this over the gemstones. Dr. Crowning will never stop sending his minions to attack us to get more of them. And if I can get my mom back, it's worth the risk.
Pandora agreed.
There is more than one reason why Dr. Crowning has moved these facilities here. There are precious discoveries underground that make these technologies work more efficiently.
Then he stood and motioned Joel toward his microscope.
Take a look at this. Dr. Crowning has been having me research the biological effects of combining our new technology with human DNA. Observe.
What? Why would you do that?
Joel could not help himself. His curiosity took over, and he noticed an enormous femur bone near the microscope. It had several drilled holes from previous experiments.
Are you sure that is human?
Joel looked at the red mass of cells under the microscope while Pandora placed a tiny metal rod against it, giving it an electric jolt. Suddenly the mass quivered, cycled into a spiral, and transformed into a dark, scaly ball with a metallic sheen. As it moved, it continuously manipulated its form into various prism shapes. The jewels in Joel's watch immediately responded to the danger and glowed into a blinding light. The mass leaped toward Joel and he jumped back, knocking it to the floor with his arm. Right before it fell, it disappeared into thin air. Joel's watch toned down, but not completely.
What was that?
Exclaimed Joel, vigorously wiping his arm where the mass had touched it. Pandora took a labored breath, trying to recover from the shock.
That is one of the unknowns that I spoke of earlier. They do not always tell me the truth about the nature of the materials they bring me for these experiments. I fear that the darkness has enveloped this whole place. No telling what has been affected. This place is becoming the dark city rising from the mountain I saw in the other dimension, full of smoke and sulfur. That mass was similar to the creature's skin you saw in the fog, correct?
Joel nodded, noticing the bandage around Pandora's finger.
Yeah. It just disappeared into the fog right before our car could smash into it.
Astonishing. It seems that fear triggers the creature's flight response. Only it can teleport instead of using up its energy by running,
said Pandora, lifting his finger to his forehead.
You mean that thing can teleport too? Anywhere it wants?
Joel looked around nervously.
Precisely,
said Pandora, as if it was the most normal thing in the world.
However, now that this has all happened, I know I am further away from my wife than ever. I can feel it. This darkness has consumed us.
Pandora sat down in defeat. Joel sat down beside him.
There is still hope that you will see your wife again, Pandora. You just have to believe in Jesus, and he will reunite you when the time is right. Please, leave this place.
Joel pleaded.
We need to get out of here.
Joel's watch began to glow into a beacon again. Then there was a sharp knock at the door. Pandora looked up with fear.
Dr. Pandora!
It was Dr. Crowning's voice. His knocking intensified. Pandora whispered hastily.
Joel, right now you are his secret asset, but if Dr. Crowning finds you here now, we are both in grave danger. Quickly.
He opened the trap door on his floor.
I hate to have you go alone, but for now you must.
What about Rachel?
Whispered Joel. His head was spinning.
I can't just leave her here.
Pandora led him onto the ladder.
Doctor?
Yelled Dr. Crowning.
Yes, I'm coming. Just a moment.
Pandora held the lid open as Joel stepped down.
Rachel has her parents. I will also ensure she is safe until you can return for her.
The knocking grew louder still.
Now, you must go.
Pandora closed the trapdoor as Joel quickly climbed down the ladder into the darkness.